All right, welcome to the show, everyone. This is the Mama Mindset, and it's actually episode 101. I wanted to kick it off with a bang, but before we get into all of that, the reason why I started this show is just as a first time mom, I found myself in the position where I actually did do a lot of research prior to having my daughter. And then my daughter got here, and I was like, okay, what the hell? And I realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. So I was like, okay, how am I going to surround myself with as much information as possible? And also, like, it would be nice to have like some cool mom friends too. So I came up with the idea of talking to 1,000 moms. That is our first goal. And so today we take the first step in our journey of learning, which is one of our goals, educating ourselves, and then hopefully building a safe space where it's okay if you're a first time mom, I don't know, second time mom, right? And you still don't have the answers to this. That's cool. We're going to have experts on our show like today to help us through it. So, without further ado, let me tell you a little bit more about today's guest. Okay, she's a certified sleep consultant who got her start as a night nanny in college while studying and competing internationally in Taekwondo. Spending nights with the people she was helping out, she realized how much she loved helping families navigating those early sleepless months. At first, she learned everything hands on, but over time, she started wondering if cried out was the only option for parents who wanted their baby to sleep through the night. She decided to dig deeper, take a leap, and become a sleep consultant so she could help families with more personalized, supportive approach. She says it's been an incredibly rewarding career. We're going to find out more about that. And let's get into it. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Aldana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're just happy to have you here. I feel like sleep is really the number one thing on, especially as a new parent. We're like, how can we get this kid to sleep, right? And so,
Right.
right? And it's just like, I feel like, when you're an adult and you don't have any kids, it's not something you consider. And then you get a child and you're like, what in the world is going on? Well, I know part of it is as a newborn, the circadian rhythm is off, right? But why do you think parents struggle so much with sleep?
Well, I think the main reason is because there's so much information out there. Like your mom can tell you one thing, and then your friends have a different experience, and they are all sharing, and I think that's great. But also sometimes we need to filter that information and like also live through our own experience. So I feel like internet is a big part of it. There's so much information, and we don't really know.
Yeah, I think it is kind of like a big, like, I don't know. And then also it's like, okay, well, this expert says this is right. This other expert says this is right. So I think as a mom, for me, when it comes to information, I'm like trying to decipher what is correct. In addition to that, like what is best for my child. Because everything that you hear on the internet may not actually be the best method for your child. And so the hot topic is always sleep training, right? Like, what does sleep training mean? There's this variation. So, what is your definition of sleep training?
I always tell parents, or at least the way I work, sleep training is not putting your baby in the crib, closing the door, and just like see in the morning. That's not what it is for me. For me, it's establishing a good foundation, right? Like there's a lot of families who like do contact sleeping and then they have a hard time breaking it. Like we work on that. We work on age appropriate schedules. We work on where the baby is at, because another misconception that families have is like sleep training means like your baby's not going to feed at night, and reality is like some babies still need to feed. I take clients with babies as young as 12 weeks old, and I always tell them like right away, like probably your baby's not ready to sleep a 12-hour stretch. Like if they are, amazing, but if they are not, we're still going to feed them. So it's just a little bit of like age appropriate schedule, feeding more efficiently during the day. Like if we can get those calories during the day, then that's great. They don't need as many feeds at night. And obviously learning how to sleep independently without like, sleeping on mom or like relying on being bounced to sleep.
Okay, so then I would ask, my follow up is, do you find that there's a difference between breastfed parents and bottle fed parents when it comes to sleep training? Does one or the other have ease, or is it kind of evened out?
It really depends. I feel like for moms who decide to breastfeed, sometimes it's just easier to nurse your child to sleep, and that makes it kind of harder for them to fall asleep independently. When babies are bottle feeding only, like they have to get up, get a bottle ready, then they feed the baby. It's kind of like it takes a little bit more time, so baby's not necessarily feeding to sleep, but it's not necessarily because they are breastfeeding. It's just because it takes less time and the baby knows that the breast is available right away.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. What do you think is the appropriate age to start sleep training your kid?
Well, it really depends on when the family feels ready, because this is a process that where you involve the consultant, like the consultant is there to help you and kind of like coach you, but the parents are doing all the work and it's exhausting. Like, you know how being sleep deprived is, and it just takes so much energy. With the methods I work with, like you're always comforting your baby. So the first few nights feel tough. So it depends on when do you feel ready to do it, and also it's about the expectations. Like babies as young as 3 months old might still need a feed, so I tell the parents, like, if you want to sleep train, that's great, your baby will sleep longer stretches and can fall asleep independently, but he might still need the 1 a.m. feed. And I'm not going to tell you not to feed your child. But for older babies who might be ready to sleep through the night, there might be a little bit more of tears involved just because they are so used to their routines, and breaking habits is difficult. Even if you are offering support, they will resist the change.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So if you had to say, let's say a sweet spot to start introducing like a bedtime routine and then maybe the early process of sleep training, around what age would you suggest based off of your experience?
So bedtime routine is something that you can start from week one. It's great because like baby knows what to expect. Like you can start with just like bath and a book and go to sleep. Babies kind of get used to a routine and they thrive with routines, which is great. So you can start introducing that as early as week number one. You can also work on resolving day-night confusion by exposing them to natural daylight and trying to have proper wake windows. And again, it's not strictly sleep training, but it sets a good foundation for whenever the baby's ready to sleep train.
Okay, that makes sense. And so, do you think that, early on, maybe when you're working with parents, something you identify as maybe there's not a bedtime routine like in place? Like what does that look like? What's a good bedtime routine?
I would say an average bedtime routine should take you anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Bath sometimes is not part of the routine just because some parents can give their kids a bath every day, and that's okay. So after that, you just do pajamas. I always recommend that if you do a feed, you do it as the first step of the routine so baby don't get used to like feeding to sleep. Books is really good. Even if they don't know what's going on, like they remember, like they see a book and they know, like, you know what, it's bedtime, it's time for me to go to sleep. They might not create this association right away, but after some time, like they know, and it just makes the process easier.
No, that makes sense. I noticed that at least before I started doing sleep training, it was just easier to get her to go to sleep when I fed her to sleep. But the problem that caused ended up kind of bottlenecking. She was having some stomach tummy issues, and so if she didn't burp, it made it 10 times worse. Like at a certain point in the day, it was just catching up, and then she would have like these gas attacks. So that's interesting. Got into like our version of sleep training. That is kind of like how I start my routine with her. I feed her, and then we change her, give her like I'm gonna say like a light massage with like some Vaseline that's safe for kids, and then we read a book. She has kind of like her sleep sack on. We put that on, and then she knows it's time for bedtime. I'll take her into the room, then I sing to her for a little bit, and then I place her in the crib, and then she dozes off to sleep. So that has been working, I would say, the majority of the time. She's only 3 months
Mhm.
though. So if I had to give a grade, right, out of like 7 days, I'm gonna say 5 out of 7 is really solid. The other two, we got a little fuss going on. So I don't know. Do you think that's something that just gets better with age, or is it just doing it consistently every day?
Yeah, I think consistency takes you places. Like as you mentioned before, I grew up with like an athlete mentality, and I think it applies to everything you want to do in life. Like if you do something consistently, like results will come. For some people it takes longer, and for some people it takes like less. But that's normal, right? Like not all babies are the same, and some get used to a routine like after 3 days, and some need more time. And I feel like that's part of the journey of parenthood, like figuring out who your child is and what do they need.
Yeah, and what I realize is, I should have had this listed as a question, but I guess that last nap dictates for me, like, if it's going to be a good one or if it's going to be a bad one. Have you ran into that issue?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the advice I give to my clients. I always tell them the last nap is the most important nap of the day. So if you want to keep contact napping, do it for that nap. Like all my clients do a contact nap for the last nap of the day. And they are like, why? Like, aren't we trying to break this habit? And I'm like, yes. But if your baby takes a good nap before bedtime, it's going to make your life easier. If not, it it's not going to be as simple. So yeah, it's actually part of like the program I run. Contact naps are still a thing, and it's always on the last nap.
Okay, so then I'm not off because I'm like, there's days where I'm just like, yeah, I'm just holding you right now. I'm not dealing with this because in 2, 3 hours, it's gonna be a pain. I'm not gonna get anything done when it's time to put you to sleep if I don't hold you for this nap. Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
totally. And I feel like that's the beauty of sleep training. Like, it doesn't mean that you will never contact nap again, but now you have the
okay.
choice. And if you want to do it, you can do it. But if you can't, because you need to get things done. Like you can put your baby in the crib, and they will nap while you get things done.
Okay, good. I'm on to something. This is why we have these conversations. All right. So then my next question is like, where should sleep training take place? Okay, so for us, right, my situation is a little bit different. My boyfriend, he's a survivor of epilepsy, right? And so if you don't know what that is, that's random seizure disorders. So at any given moment, he can have a seizure. So what that looks like for us is like a lot different. As far as who picks her up, sits her down, that's primarily just me, unless I'm right next to him. In addition to that, some people who have epilepsy have triggers or auras, right? He has no tells. His only tell is lack of sleep, right? Which is terrible if you have a newborn, or stress, which is terrible if you have a newborn. So essentially, we made the conscious decision that we wanted to try to push him and make sure he gets to 1 year without a seizure. He's 1 month away from that, so congrats to him. But we said, we're not going to be sleeping together. We're going to have you sleep in another room, which means that I'm in another room, right? How our house is set up, the rooms are not connected. Like, I think I would be more comfortable if, I could just walk into her room in the middle of the night and like I can hear her. So that didn't work. We ended up landing on I was going to be in the bedroom, right? And then we were going to put the crib in the bedroom with me. And then my boyfriend was going to be on the opposite end of the house. So if she wakes up in the middle of the night, cries, it doesn't wake her up. So that's not the nursery. I'm in the nursery right now. So we have her sleep training in the bedroom with me. And we go to sleep in the same room. I guess what I'm asking is, does it matter? Is it supposed to be that way? Like, what is the ideal setup? Should you be sleep training where the kid is going to be at, like, for the next 6 months to a year? Or does it not matter? Is it more of like the bedtime routine method?
Yeah, so it really depends on the baby's age. The AAP recommends room sharing until 6 months old. So the first thing you need to consider is like, how old is my baby? Because if the baby is, let's say, 7 months old and you're not room sharing anymore, then it should take place in the nursery or wherever they usually sleep. But if the baby is under 6 months old, then the parents can room share, because the reality is that some parents, for different reasons, like choose not to, and that's also okay. Then we need to make sure that sleep training takes place in the place that parents want the baby to sleep.
Gotcha. Okay. Nope, that makes sense. All right. So are you adamantly against co sleeping? And if so, why?
Against it, I choose not to work with clients who want to continue co-sleeping, just because I don't think it's aligned with sleeping independently. I mean, it can be, and there's a lot of sleep consultants that work with parents who choose to co-sleep. It's just not the way I work. I just feel like it does not align with the methods I have.
Okay, well, we're gonna get into those methods, all right? Just for my thoughts, I don't know. I'm on the as a mom, I'm on the fence about it. I definitely don't think that it's something that's safe at a very early age, right? But I could see how moms could get into that space of co-sleeping very easily, especially if you're breastfeeding. Like I'm breastfeeding. It's convenient, it's comfortable, but the paranoia aspect of rolling over and then also wanting your baby to be able to fall asleep independently. So, like, I get it, but I think that what works for us is the sleep training process and our baby sleeping separate. It's like at a 6 months to a year when my boyfriend does come back in the room with us, it's going to be way better if she's sleeping separate than us because for us, it's literally a safety hazard for her to be in the bed with the both of us. So interesting. Okay, so what do you think is a good method to establish kids under 12 weeks for sleep training?
So for kids under 12 weeks, I don't recommend any sleep training methods. I usually start with the sleep training methods after they hit the 12-week mark. And I really like the shush bath method. Tracy Hogg is the one who dig deeper into this technique. And it's great because the parents are next to the baby until they fall asleep. It's not something that they, again, close the door and say, see you in the morning, because that's not something we want for our babies. Like, so hard to hear them cry. And realistically, there's going to be some tears because if the baby is used to, let's say, contact sleeping, when you put them down, like we probably try it like early when you had your baby, like they are going to scream. But the good thing about that method is that you're next to your baby. You're offering comfort, like you're telling them, like, I'm here for you. And it's just easier for the parents and for the baby. For babies older than 6 months is a method that unfortunately it doesn't work as well. So there's a few more tiers involved. I think quick checks work really well, but it also really depends on the baby. Some babies take comfort and they do really well with, let's say, like crib side comforting, and some babies just like won't take comfort if you don't give them what they want. So really depends on the baby's personality as well and the family tolerance to tears. Some families, because they need to go back to work, they need results in 3 days. Unfortunately, methods that involve a lot of comforting take longer than 3 days. So it's a mix of the baby's personality and what the parents need.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's go over this method, right? Let's talk about the shush. What did you call it? Shush pup or
Yeah, basically that's what you do. Like after a full wake window, you put your baby down on their
okay.
backs. And if your baby is not crying, you just step out of sight because that's part of the process, right? Like letting them figure out how to fall asleep. And if they are not showing signs of distress, we let them. And a lot of times parents ask me like, but my baby's playing with their hands. And I'm like, just let them. If they are happy, we're not going to intervene. Most cases, you put them down and they start screaming. So basically, what I tell parents to do is like you put them on their side, you pat them gently, you start shushing, and at some point, like that's gonna make them feel calm. That's when you put them on their backs again, and then you step out. If they start crying, you repeat the process until they fall asleep. But if they are happy, again, we just let them figure it out because it's part of the process. Playing with their hands or like talking are really common self-soothing behaviors. So it's really important that when they are not crying, we let them explore that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so my question is there, because I've heard other methods where it's like, okay, we let them cry for 5 minutes. Is your method that you're talking about, are you there in the room the whole time? Or like at what point do you come back? Is it immediately when they start crying? Or is there a time limit?
For Shush Path, you go back immediately. There's a variant called Cribside Comforting where you wait an interval anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes. You don't really increase the intervals, like, but you need to make sure that you can stay consistent. Because again, I think sleep training is about consistency. So if you pick an interval of 2 minutes, that's what you feel comfortable with, then you need to stick to that interval. And I always tell parents that make sure that it's an interval you can do during the day and at night, because at night we want to go back to sleep. And if you have to wait 5 minutes and then offering comfort and that doesn't feel like something you can do all night long, then maybe you should pick a shorter interval, because during the day we can all sleep train, but at night when you want to go back to sleep, that's a different story.
The patience starts to run out at a certain point. Okay, so for this method, so at no point do you pick up the baby? The whole entire time you're keeping the baby in the crib, or do you pick up the baby?
For shush bath, it's a little bit more flexible. So if the baby is crying too much for the parents' liking, like they can pick them up. It's important to keep in mind that picking the baby up can wake them up and can be a little bit more stressful. For the crib side comforting method, ideally you don't pick your baby up. But again, I feel like that's when parents need to use their own judgment. As long as you're not playing like pick up, put down, then it's gonna be fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. Interesting. And so, how long, basically, if people are following this to a T, right? And it's a decent age. It's not. We're not reverting back. Let's say the baby's 2 years old, right? That might be look a little different. Even decent age for the kid. How long does it usually take? How many days before you start to see results?
So I would say 3 to 5 days to see improvement at night. Usually, night sleep gets better before naps. For
Mm-hmm.
naps, it takes 7 to 10 days. So
Gotcha.
average package lasts 2 weeks, just because it's how long it takes, and if you need to change something or adapt the routine, like it gives you like some extra days to make sure that when you finish with the family, everything's like working out.
Okay. Question: does weight of the baby have anything to do with sleep? I'm asking because when I had my daughter, she was a 10-pound baby. And so she came out and, like, at least milestone wise, like I can talk about like motor movements, all of that rolling over. She's about like a month and a half ahead of pace. And so I was trying to see, is there some type of a correlation between how they develop for sleep and how much they weigh, or is it just random?
For premature babies, it does have a correlation and you have to adjust the age. So let's say baby was born before 36 weeks old. So you need to adjust the age and you should wait a little bit longer to sleep train, because they might be 3 months old, but they are not like quite there. For babies who were born on term, like it's kind of random. Like it obviously helps if your baby has a healthy weight and if they are having enough calories during the day, but I've seen babies who have like a healthy weight and they still need to feed one time at night. So it's kind of random.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. So, can people mix and match the methods to figure out like what works for them, or would you suggest just sticking to the method and seeing it through for that period of time?
So I always like to compare it with the puzzle, right? Like all sleep training methods are a different puzzle. And if you mix and match, you might not get the full picture. Some things might work, like establishing a good bedtime routine probably works for pretty much every single sleep training method. But some things are a little bit more specific, might not be great to mix and match with other sleep training methods. So what I always tell parents is like, let's stick to the method for 3 or 4 days. If you don't see any improvement, we can like review it and change it, but also give it time, because I feel like sometimes parents expect like this overnight solution, and not even Cry It Out is an overnight solution. Everything takes at least 3 days. So you need to give your baby and the process time to see if it's really working or if it's not working.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that's fair. When we went through our process, I saw improvement after like the first night in the sense of she slept in the crib by herself. And so I'll get into kind of like my sleep story, right? So in my pregnancy, and I always tell moms this, I say, pay attention to what you're eating in your pregnancy because you never know, it might pop up again when the baby gets out, because that's exactly what happened to me. So in my first term of my pregnancy, I was notoriously just sick and I didn't realize what was taking place. Like, was it just because I was having morning sickness or was it something specific? About 2.5 months into it, I realized that it was because I was eating chicken and I could not hold down chicken to save my life. To know me, you know how much chicken I actually eat. That's pretty much all I eat is chicken and fish. So for me to cut out chicken, I was like, what am I going to eat? I have no idea. But I made it through the pregnancy because I just adapted, right? And
Yeah.
then what ended up happening is, of course, you have the baby and you want to eat everything that you couldn't eat during pregnancy, right? Probably wasn't the smartest idea because I should have eased into something because I'm breastfeeding to see if it was going to affect her. Didn't do that. I went for the full plate, sushi, fish, chicken, just everything, right? That first couple weeks. Mind you, the first week or so, no side effects, nothing that I noticed. She was, eating, burping, no tummy aches, cool. By the time we got to week 3, at a certain time, it started to be hell. Like she was screaming her head off. And then we couldn't figure it out for the life of us. We was like, okay, what's going on? Like, why is she having this stomach aches? We're like, okay, well, maybe she's not burping. Because sometimes we wouldn't nurse her to sleep and she wouldn't burp. Like, maybe what's piling up. Right? Okay, well, then we got her to burp every single time. So clearly it's not that. Like, what is this thing? What could it be? We took her to the doctor. They're like, well, maybe she has some colic. I'm like, my mom was like, colic babies scream, like, notoriously. This is happening at a certain time, like every single night. What's going on? So I started doing research, yada, yada, yada. Figured out it's gas. Okay, well, why is she having gas? So something just randomly hit me, and I was like, like, what have I been eating? Like, maybe she has a food allergy, right? To something. And I was like, well, what could it be? And I was like, well, dang, I couldn't hold down chicken during my pregnancy. Maybe maybe she's allergic to chicken. Maybe it's like passing through or whatever. So I'm like, I'm going to go 24 hours without chicken. Go 24 hours without chicken, gone. No tummy aches whatsoever. Wild, right? So I tell that
Yeah.
story to say this. So during that time, which literally ended up being about, I'm going to say a month and a half, right? To get her to go to sleep at night was damn near impossible because she was uncomfortable. She was screaming, right? So some of that's not to her fault. The only way she would go to sleep is by me holding her, right? And at the time, don't judge me, I did not know that sleeping together on a couch was probably the worst thing that I could do. I did not
It
know.
happened to every parent.
I didn't know. Had I known that, we would have immediately flip flopped because my boyfriend was in the bed. I was in the nursery, right? We would have flip flopped. I would have been in the bed. He would have been in the nursery, whatever, right? I ended up, it was crazy. My mom took a picture of it, like how we were sleeping. I had a travel pillow on my neck, right? I had a pillow to the left because that was the pillow in between, right? She would sleep on my shoulder, right? And then I had a pillow behind me and I had to like back into the spot. Like, and I'm sleeping at like a 45-degree angle. And she wouldn't go to sleep till like 3 o'clock in the morning. Good thing I was on maternity leave, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe 2, 3 hours. But like, okay, so when am I gonna use the bathroom? You know what I mean? Just like all these things.
Right. Yeah.
That was insane. So I couldn't wait until sleep training. My mom kept talking about it, like, okay, we're gonna do it. We did it a little early. We did it at 2.5 months. And that's just based off of like how Sky is and her weight and stuff. My mom was like, okay, we'll do an alternate version and we won't try to get her to sleep all the way through the night. We'll just try to get her to sleep separate. And so I don't remember what the version is that she did for sleep training, but the gist of it is it's similar to the shush pat, right? But she
Hmm.
did would go in and she would pick her up, like if it got to the point where she was inconsolable, and then she would put her down and then walk out. We had the baby monitor on. It was a certain amount of time. She did increase the intervals, and I'm looking back at it. It probably would have been easier for us to keep the same intervals. Like that's something that I would have suggested too, because we did 3 minutes, 5, 10, and then 15, and then like for us it was easier at night than it is in the day because in the day I have, I'm busy, I have to work, I have to do all this stuff, but it was intense. And then it just one night it just clicked and it was just like, ah, like I could do things now. I don't have to hold the baby all day every day. And so I'm so excited that we can do it. It was why I'm so passionate. I wanted to have you on the show and just talk about sleep because as a mom, just as a person, you can't function if you're not sleeping. So like it's so important that we find safe ways to to train our kids to sleep. But that's my little sleep training story. I wanted to get into like this next phase, which I hear some of my mom friends talk about, which is sleep regression. What is sleep regression
Yeah.
and what should we do about it?
What I feel like it's really important to talk about what a sleep regression is because it has such a terrible reputation. And I get it. Going through a sleep regression is tough because your baby will not sleep. But what is a sleep regression? A sleep regression is when your baby learns a new skill and they are going over this cognitive process. Let's say for the 4 month regression, babies usually learn how to roll. And sometimes they just wake up at 2 in the morning and they are like, what a wonderful time to roll. And they start doing it, but they don't realize they will get overtired. They will have a hard time falling asleep. And then they wake up the entire family. The good thing is that it doesn't last forever. It usually lasts like 1 or 2 weeks. But that being said, since it's a cognitive process, there's nothing we can do to prevent it. And if we could, we don't want to do that, right? Because it's part of like their development. What usually happens with the regressions is that since the baby's up all night, parents tend to bring the baby to the bed, and that's when they end up co-sleeping, because sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get your baby to sleep, because we are all adults at the next day, we have to function, and like baby, work, or whoever doesn't really care if we slept or not the night before. But what happens is that sometimes it turns into an habit where now babies go sleeping and I don't know how to break it. So that's the tough part about sleep regressions. But what we can do is sticking to the routine as much as possible. Like if the baby's on a schedule, just keep putting your baby down. They will probably take longer to fall asleep, and you know what, it is what it is. And at night they will likely wake up like more often than usual. Just don't start any new habits that don't want to continue. Like if co-sleeping is not your thing, don't bring the baby to bed. I mean, if you need to get them to sleep, that's great, but remember to transfer them to the crib, and keep in mind that this is not going to last forever. Just 1 or 2 weeks and then you're done until the next regression, obviously.
Lord. This mom thing is never ending. It seems like it's just like, oh, okay, you made it through it. Here's the next thing. Buckle up.
Yes.
Okay. That's so interesting. Okay, well that's good to know at least that it's a period of time. It expires at a certain point, and to try to keep the routine as much as possible. I'll keep that in mind. So, when would you suggest bringing in a specialist? Maybe fill in the blank. Okay, I'm a mom. I need a sleep specialist if
So I would say I know that earlier I said that there's a lot of information online, but you can find a lot of really useful information if you look in the right places. And if that's not working for you, or for any reason, like there's a lot of online classes that you can take for like 6 hours. But the truth is, some families don't have 6 hours to sit down, take a class, and learn how to sleep train their kids. And some babies, some parents also like the reassurance. I work with a lot of first time parents, and they would rather hire an expert. So it really depends for every family. But I would say they are feeling ready, if they feel like they have too much information online and they can't stick to a method. Like there's a lot of really good books. So if you tried something that, again, the source is reliable and it didn't work, then it's a good time to call a specialist. Or if you're in a rush, I don't like to sleep train in a rush, but the truth is sometimes moms like have to go back to work in 2 weeks and they really need the baby sleeping. So it's a really good time to call a specialist and talk about realistic expectations. I feel like a good sleep consultant will tell you like your baby can sleep through the night or your baby might not. At the end of the day, you can also consult the pediatrician. Some pediatricians are on board with dropping the night feeds like for good at 3 months old. Some pediatricians are against it. So I usually tell the parents like just double check with your pediatrician, see what they think, if your baby is ready or not, and we can set expectations. I usually say for babies under 6 months old, we won't drop all the night feeds, we will keep one. Unless your pediatrician says otherwise, in that case, I'm happy to instruct you on how to do it.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so if you had to say, let's give like three no's, big no-nos for sleep or sleep training, what would you say the biggest three no's are?
First one, don't feed your baby to sleep. It just leads to more feedings for comfort, just because your baby gets used to that, right? Like if you were a baby and you're being nursed to sleep, you fall asleep, you're comfortable, you're happy because you're next to mom, and you wake up in the crib, like you would freak out. It's like going to bed in your bed and waking up in the yard. You would be like, what just happened? So I know that at the beginning it's really hard to put your baby down awake, but you want to make sure that they are like at least conscious that you're putting them in the crib so they don't wake up and freak out. I would say that's a big no. Another big no, it would be comparing your baby to other babies. Each baby is different. Just because your friend has a baby that sleeps 12-hour stretches since week 3, that doesn't mean that it's going to be your baby, and it is what it is. I feel like most parents say like, oh, my baby like slept through the night from like week 1. I'm like, will they really? Yeah. Yeah, my mom actually says that with me. She was like, "You always slept through the night." And I'm like, "Mom, you're such a big liar and not good for my business." Yeah, and the third no, it's like don't rush it. Don't do it if you don't feel ready. I feel like there's a lot of pressure for parents, like, is your baby sleeping through the night already? And for some families, like, they don't want to go through the sleep training process for any reason. They shouldn't. I feel like no one who is not ready or doesn't want to do it should go through this process, because it's hard. Like the first 2 or 3 days, it feels like it gets worse before it gets better. And if you don't really want to do it, like, it's gonna be hell. So I always tell parents, like, do you really want to go through this? Like, why do you want to sleep train your child? Like, I'm happy to tell you how to do it, but is it something that you want to do, or it's something that your mother-in-law is telling you that you have to do? Because for some parents, waking up like every other hour at night works. And if it works, don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so those are the three no's. What are the three yeses?
3, bedtime routine. Start the bedtime routine as early as you can so your baby gets used to. Wake windows. Those are not precisely like, if your baby is 3 months old, their wake windows are not going to be exactly 90 minutes, but kind of follow a wake window. It's usually like closer to what experts say. um, and just be consistent, as everything in life, right? Like, I know that it's hard to get your baby to sleep independently, especially if you don't have a sleep trainer. Just try. If you put your baby down and they screaming and you want to pick them up, that's fine, but try again. Like, at some point they will get used to it. And I had a lot of moms who told me, like, you know what, I actually followed your advice, and after 1 week now they spend 5 minutes in the crib. So I will keep trying, and like, maybe at some point they will fall asleep. There are parents who like are not in a rush, so they have time to like do this really gradually, and it works really well for them, just because at some point the baby's like, well, I guess this is where I'm gonna sleep.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I think consistency and not giving up are like huge keys. And then, like you said, do what works best for you. If you're not in a rush, they'll get there at some point. And having that patience, but also showing that the child the consistency that, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to sleep alone. And there's nights
Yeah.
where I'm telling Sky, I'm like, okay, so we're being fussy right now, but it's still happening. It's still happening. You're still going to get in your crib. Interesting. Okay, I love that. Is there anything you want to add that we haven't talked about?
No, I think we cover pretty much everything. And as I always tell my parents, do these when you feel ready. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to ask for help. Like, even if it's not like a sleep trainer, like, or a specialist, like, talk with your friends, reach out for help. Like, and let's normalize that babies wake up every other hour at the beginning, and being sleep deprived, it's just exhausting. I feel like people don't talk enough about maternal depression and how being sleep deprived can like actually affect other aspects of your life, and we should talk more about it. And if someone's struggling, like, it's normal.
Yeah, I always talk about one of my favorite sayings is like, drop your pride, get your tribe. So whoever that is, whether it's a sleep consultant like you, or for me it was my mom, I wouldn't have made it through the first 3 months without my mom, like at all. It was one night, and part of this is postpartum, but it was one night where she was leaving, right? Because she was going home. She has a life. She came over to help. She was going home. Sky was crying for me. Well, she was about to start crying for me, and I was crying for my mama because I was just like, no, I can't do this. I was like, I can't do this. You mean I have to be a mom now? Why are you leaving? No. So I think it is super important and not discussed enough about how much like it just having help. I always say, like, even if it's your best friend and you guys don't know, you guys are both in the situation for the first time, just having somebody there that you could pass the baby off to and just go in the other room for 5 minutes and regroup is gonna be like amazing.
Yeah, or just
And
take a shower.
take a the best part of
That's
my
kind of a
day.
luxury, though.
The best part of my day is the shower. Like, I swear, I just want to be left alone for this 10 minutes that I have to just do shower, face routine, brush my teeth, and just Lord. So just having somebody there to take a shower is so underrated. These are things that you're not thinking about. Like, while you're pregnant, I wasn't thinking about this. Like, before I had a kid, absolutely not. I wasn't thinking about this. Like, oh my goodness. I literally get excited thinking about taking a shower these days. Like, I'm like, oh yes, highlight of my day. So I agree that like That's the whole point of like having this space too, is like, okay, well, maybe if you even don't have anybody, now you have a whole podcast here where you can listen to other people's stories. You can take something like, okay, I'm gonna add that. And that's what I started to do, is I started to like hear from my mom friends, and I'm like, okay, what can I take from that? Okay, I can add this into my routine. I can see if Sky likes this, and then go from there. Wow. Well, I'm super excited that I'm so happy we had you on the show. I feel like I learned so much, and like it's some of the things I already knew, it reiterated like, okay, I'm not crazy, especially about, man, those last naps. I'm not even playing anymore. Contact nap until we figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And at some point, your baby will like be able to fall asleep independently for every single nap. And I always tell parents like enjoy those contact naps because one day it's gonna be your last contact nap, and you will never know until you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll miss him. Crazy enough, when we stopped sleeping on the couch, I did kind of miss, I'd like missed having her on me. And like, I'm happy she's in her own bed, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but that was like, that was the time. It was the time, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right, well, where can people find you? You know, if they want to hire you, where do they go to? Shout out your socials, website, all that.
Yeah, so my social media it's ABCZZ for parents, just like in my name under me. And you can also find my website. It's also abczzforparents.com. They can book a free sleep assessment so we can talk about expectations and where the baby is at, and we can take it from there.
Thank you. Well, tune in next time on the Mama Mindset. Can't wait to just have, great stories, connect with all of you, and great guests. I'm trying to talk to 1,000 moms and mix in some experts in there as well. So if you want to be on the show, make sure you reach out. You can hit me up directly at The Real Scribe on any of my social media. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, The Mama Mindset, and listen to us anywhere that you get your podcasts. I will see you next time.